Sindiso Mfenyana, a struggle and ANC veteran, was the first black Secretary of Parliament in the history of South Africa. This veteran, who lived in exile for many years and who dedicated his young adult life to the liberation struggle, documents his memoirs in this book, Walking with Giants. The late struggle icon Ahmed Kathrada wrote the foreword for this book, of course, describing it as the tapestry of the inner workings of the ANC. The veteran and the author of the book joins us this morning from our studios in Cape Town. Sindiso, good morning to you and thank you so much for coming through.
Good morning and thank you for having me in here.
Thank you so much, Tata. Now, I know you had a conversation briefly during the policy conference with my colleagues at Nasrec. But let's just reflect back on the title of your book, Walking with Giants. Tell us more about the significance of this title.
Well, I spent about a year in 1961 in Johannesburg at what was the offices of the African National Congress, which was already burned, so it was working underground. And I can only say that within that 1 year, I learned more politics than what I had learned up to that stage. And I'm talking about being at St. John's for 5 years and at Fort Hare for 3 years. But Johannesburg gave me everything. And the giants I'm talking about, mainly Walter Sisulu, Duma Nokwe, Nelson Mandela, not that much, but also I met him there. And I was working also under direct supervision by Alfred Nzo, later on the Secretary General of the ANC. Mabumlangeni, who is still one of the two, I think, remaining Rivonia trialists. So those are the people. But after that, I went to the Soviet Union with 8 other colleagues from Fort Hare. Now, there, yes, began my real introduction to international affairs, to international life. So I began to see even our own struggle in the light of the struggle waged by other people for liberation, particularly the Vietnamese War. There was also, of course, in the Middle East, Latin America. There were all the time some liberation movements. So during that time, I spent 3 years in Hungary, 3 years in Egypt, and from 1974, I stayed in Zambia, going in and out until we repatriated in 1991.
All right.
So those giants are from South Africa, the world, and as the book will say, who is the giant, who is not?
And I suppose that's the main question, who is that giant and who's not? But let's just go back to your job. I mean, you were the first black man to become the Secretary of Parliament. Talk to us about your experiences back then, because I believe a lot of people saw that as a big sign of change. But did you sort of feel any pressure on you at that time?
There was not much pressure because, fortunately, I had colleagues, although they were all white, but they were very much prepared. They were professionals.
Yeah.
They were prepared to work under this black man. And in fact, as I learned as time went on, some of them already were not happy with the apartheid system. And they were just happy to be in this new South Africa. So they were ready to give me all the assistance I required.
Yeah. And it wasn't just you, because a whole lot of other people had not been to Parliament. Because on your book, I think it's on page 288, you make mention of the fact that some African Parliament members had to travel or had never traveled to Cape Town, let alone be in Parliament. So tell us more about this. How was the experience of them being in Parliament for the first time and having been in Cape Town for the first time as well?
Yes, indeed. Even people who were staying in Cape Town had never set foot to the Parliament. It was not for Africans or blacks. Well, at least the colored and Indian people had been integrated into the Parliament, but certainly the Africans didn't have a clue. So when they first came in preparation for their swearing in, some of the colleagues, and there were some who had been with me in exile, told me later that this place can be awe-inspiring. It's huge. It's got a lot of passages. You do feel as if you are not really where you should be. But they said that when they finally saw me as we were reading the names of those who were being sworn in, they said, well, look, if that fellow is sitting there, it's very unlikely that we will be taken unawares or in one way or another attacked.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you changed when you came into Parliament was the dress code of the parliamentarians. You had to do away with certain things like your wigs. Talk to us about your decision. What had informed your decision?
Well, the presiding officers, especially people like Freni Ginola was the speaker. She had spent some time also in London during the exile years. But we had also witnessed the new independent African countries and the way they behaved. We just could not understand how people in a climate like the African climate could be putting on wigs. And these are some of the things we sort of discussed as we were talking, that we don't think we would use that in South Africa. And indeed, those were some of the first things we did away with.
But talking about the behavior in Parliament, Sindiso, my apologies, I have to come in there. How do you feel when you see the current state of Parliament, the fighting, the screaming? How does it make you feel?
It's a bit unfortunate. I'm not here, so I can't really pinpoint what could be the reason, but clearly things are changing, and what that is to be expected. But to go to the extent of physical engagement is certainly not what is expected of any parliament. But I suppose it's with time things will improve.
Okay, all right. Okay, Babsindi, so we have to leave it at that due to time constraints, but thank you so much for chatting to us on Morning Life. And go sit that.
All right.
All right, Sindiso Mfenyana is a struggle and ANC veteran, and he was the first Black Secretary of Parliament talking to us about his book. Let's say